Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, May 25th, 2023 meeting of the Indian River County Planning and Zoning Commission. We'll call this meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda?
No, sir.
None. Excellent. First order of business is the approval of the minutes of the April 27th, 2023 meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
Move to approve by Beth.
Second.
Second by Todd. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. We've got three agenda items tonight. One of them is a not on consent quasi-judicial, and then we have two public hearings. So we'll start with the item that is not on consent. And this is a C West of Vero, and it is a request for a preliminary plat approval for a 30-lot, single-family conventional subdivision to be known as C West of Vero Beach. Cornerstone Communities of Florida is the owner. Skulky, Biddle, and Stoddard LLC are the agent. It's located on the south side of 49th Street, approximately 1,500 feet west of 43rd Avenue. The zoning is RS6. It is residential single family up to 6 units per acre. Land use designation is M2, medium density residential 2, up to 10 units per acre. The density is 3.07 units per acre. We'll begin with any declaration of ex parte communications on this agenda item? None. And anyone who would like to speak tonight on this, please stand and get sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
And we'll have the staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Patrick Murphy, Senior Planner, will be presenting this item.
Thank you, Ryan. As the chairman stated, this is the C West subdivision preliminary plat request. Property located on the south side of 49th Street. Directly to the east is the Victor Hart Senior Community Enhancement Complex, known to most of us as the Gifford Park. To the west, Lindsay Lane subdivision. On the north side of the road is the Waterway Village Plan Development, and to the south is industrially zoned property. At this point, the north arrow actually orients to the right on all the preceding slides. Here's the aerial showing the development as it's laid within the existing property. Preliminary plat shows 30 lots within the subdivision, each lot having connection to the internal roadway. On the traffic circulation plan, it's rather simple due to the size of this property. It's just one road, runs north to south, ends in a cul-de-sac, and you can see within the red circle, there's a non-gated full-access driveway connection to 49th Street. In the end of the cul-de-sac is going to be where the mail kiosk is at, as well as the pavilion. Stormwater plan is a centralized stormwater treatment facility that's in the the southwest portion of the property. This is all underground drainage. There's no open swale conveyance. It's all pipes, one system, and it will actually run forward if in any times of overflow if it needs to. It will be drained to the canal running along 49th Street. Landscape plan they have shown here, a 25-foot type B buffer along the north side of the project, provides for a nice aesthetic vegetative screen when you're driving down 49th Street. It also buffers the project from road noise. Along their lake, they have the lake shoreline trees that are planted that are meeting all the code requirements. On the east side of the project is the native upland preservation area. All of the oaks and the pines that were within this area have been preserved. There are a few trees within the project itself within the roadway that were mitigated for that are being planted in this upland as well. Required improvements, they're required to construct C West Drive, provide water and sewer and electricity, construct the stormwater treatment system, and install the pavilion and mail kiosk. Developer is also required to install their internal sidewalks along the common property, provide the street lighting, all the street poles, and the common green space and recreation area. With that, staff recommendation, staff recommends that the PZC approve the preliminary plat for the C West subdivision with the conditions listed in the staff report. Those conditions being the final tree protection and mitigation plans must be approved during the LDP review. Final landscape and buffer plan will also be closely monitored during the LDP. Final street lighting design and then installation during the certificate of completion process, construction of the internal sidewalks, and all other subdivision improvements. With that, be happy to answer any questions the commission may have. The applicant is in attendance.
Thank you, Patrick. Any questions on the right? Chip?
On the western edge, why is it not a similar buffer to the eastern edge? Because, I mean, the eastern edge, you're up against parks. The western edge, you're up against houses.
So on the eastern edge, that was where sort of your existing native upland vegetation actually existed. So there was more trees that could be preserved along the eastern edge. Along the western edge, you've got single-family homes against single-family homes, so use. Those aren't typically buffered in between, but that is why the upland preserve is on the east side, basically because they save the most of the existing trees that were on the site that were worth actually saving.
You good, Chip?
How deep are the lots on the western side?
How deep are these? I believe these are 110 feet deep.
Yeah, my eyes can't pick it up, sorry.
Looks like 120 feet deep, Chip.
Yep, it says 120 on here.
120 by 70.
Yeah, they're the Biddle, Schulke, Biddle, and Stoddard. They're the smallest they can be to fit width-wise. Any of these 10-acre subdivisions, there's no landscaping required on any of the perimeters except for the road frontage. So just because we had native uplands on the site is why we had to do that native preservation on the east side.
Okay. I'm good.
Anyone else on this side?
I had just one question that I just didn't see it on the plan anywhere. How is sewage going to be taken care of? Are you connecting into an existing lift station, or is there a lift station on site somewhere? Because I didn't see it anywhere on the plans.
Yes, not a lift station.
Yeah, actually, this is one of the few areas where the county was gung-ho on having one lift station for a couple subdivisions.
Okay.
So there's actually a subdivision, or a lift station, I'm sorry, to the west of the cul-de-sac down that road. That's why there's actually a right-of-way right there, and we're gonna tie into the manhole, which feeds into existing public lift station to the west.
Perfect. Thank you.
If you look at the top left corner of the slide here, there's the rectangle, there's an existing lift station there, and they have a utility easement. They're gonna be running their sewer lines through that are gonna connect to it.
Gotcha. Yeah. That, very difficult to read on these.
It is, yeah, when you reduce them like that.
Plan, Robert.
Thanks, sir.
You good, Robert?
That was my
Yep.
question on it, yeah.
You good? Anyone on the left? I see no one. I've got two questions. What's a Miami curb street design?
So flanked on either side of the street is a Miami curb gutter, where it's sort of like a little valley in there rather than a raised 6-inch curb where it collects the water. So it's basically a little valley curve on either side of the road.
And it then goes underground?
Yeah, then it collects it to inlets, and then pipe conveys it to the stormwater pond.
And do those inlets hold water?
Temporarily, the water basically is gravity fed to the stormwater pond, so it's only there for a certain period of time, but it's all flowing basically downhill, if you will, to the pond itself.
How about really wet conditions? How long is it there?
I'm not sure what the holding on that is. I don't remember the stormwater calculations. I don't think that's been presented. It'll be in the LDP and reviewed by our stormwater engineers. I don't know if Joda can answer that question.
Well, if you have a lake, wet detention stormwater system, there's really no way to keep the pipes dry. They're already 2 feet below the normal water elevation. So that's typically a issue when you have dry retention, where you can possibly have dry pipes. But realistically, there's no way to make these pipes all dry anytime, wet season, dry season, it doesn't matter.
So they hold water.
Well, I wouldn't say they hold water that much. I mean, it may dry out. Typically, we try to do sumps in the bottom of the inlets if we're in a dry area, but anything this far west really isn't that condition.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if someone asked you about water in the pipes. I haven't had anybody ask me about that. So.
Yeah, my interest in water in the pipes is mosquito breeding.
Yeah, I'm not privy to that stuff. I've never had anyone complain that.
Yep.
But I'd say any subdivision that has a lake designed with it, they have water in the pipes 99%
Right.
of the time.
And we've seen over the last 20 or 25 years, we've seen a real shift in the mosquitoes that are transmitting West Nile from mosquitoes coming out of the citrus groves to mosquitoes coming out of the neighborhoods, and I suspect they're coming from those pipes.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know I've never heard a mosquito control district have any staff. I've never heard of them going and spraying individual inlets.
Yep.
Not something I'm aware
Yep.
of. I know the old groves, it's maintaining water where they just have sitting water. The design, as you asked about the Miami curb, that it gets rid of that issue.
Yeah.
Everything's gravity fed, it goes to the inlet and it's gone. I just don't know of mosquitoes, and especially if it's a full pipe. Anytime mosquitoes usually breed, it's a small bit of water that holds. If you're in a pan or something like that, or a small puddle. I've never seen it. Otherwise every lake in the county would be breeding mosquitoes all day long. So just for the sheer fact that these are full of water, I'm sure the mosquitoes don't breed in there.
Well, there's a mosquito that specializes in those underground pipes. And if you look at Houston, the major St. Louis encephalitis epidemics in Houston and Dallas, Fort Worth, they were all underground. They were all underground mosquitoes. So just
First
so.
I've heard of that, and certainly we'll look at it, but there's no way with the wet detention design that the LDRs require that we can have dry pipes. I mean, it's.
Right, we'll let mosquito control worry about that, but they're aware for
That's fine.
sure.
That raises a good question. Do they review plans at all? Do they have any input into any of these?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Typically, they only get involved when they're around their facilities, but they do, yes, they are routed the plans. And also, where I thought you were going to go with this is mosquito control is granted the access to all subdivisions through the plat. It's standard language that mosquito control can utilize the subdivisions and the stormwater ponds to.
They don't have to sign off like the fire department or?
Not, I mean, again, on a run-of-the-mill subdivision like this, no, but other projects where they either have an impoundment or access through a project, they're involved. They have a pulse on what they need to be reviewing, for sure.
And I'm sure they're complaint-driven anyways. Just
Yeah.
go to-
Sure, and they have access to all these.
Correct,
all these
precisely, yeah. If they
developments,
were
and
to come in
go
and
in.
spray, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yep. So my other question was the transplanted palms. What's the success rate for transplanting those
Very high.
palms?
They're super easy to transplant.
They're better
You
than,
can pluck them out of the ground, lay them on the ground for weeks, put them back in the ground, and
better than I do then. So good, okay. So we'll go ahead and open the floor for any public comment. Seeing none, we'll.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a non-voting member, but I have a question on behalf of the school board. So this project looks like the units are rather smaller. So are we looking at affordable housing then, possibly?
No, these are standard lot sizes for the zoning. What you're referring to is a small lot subdivision where they would be even smaller, and that would be the low-income housing. Actually, a standard lot for this.
Yeah, I know the location, so I was hoping that might be something that we could
But I
help
think
promote.
they're 2,500. I don't think they're 1,500 to 2,500. They're over 2,500, so it's
Okay,
just a standard,
got it.
I believe.
Okay, so the floor, public comment is done, and we'll go to additional commissioner questions now, and I see Chip
My apologies, yeah. There was a discussion as to, and it, first of all, the standard subdivision. Having the Miami curb and gutter is a nice little feature that we don't see a ton anymore, at least in a reasonable price range, so I'm glad to see that. But the question I had was, you discussed that all the drainage is gonna head south, but then if it's in a heavy deluge or whatever, you're gonna be able to pump it to the 49th Street ditch?
It's not, it's a separate pipe. When you have a wet detention.
Overflow?
Separate piping altogether. I tried to talk to the developer into putting a lake up front, but they want it in the back, so we have to do a separate pipe that goes out front, so they always have a positive outfall, because it's controlled with a control structure, so it first has to reach that height.
Right.
And that flows through the pipe to go out to the.
Standard concrete box with the grill on that as well, so. Yeah, and it is quite dry out that way, so it's not a whole lot of worry, but.
So Joe, is there an easement that pipe runs under, like at the back of those lots?
That's right there. It's next to the typical Miami curb.
Okay.
We'll have it under the Miami curb going to the back, and then 5 feet off of that will be the drainage pipe. On the other side will be water main,
Gotcha.
and then the sewer will run down the middle of the roads, which is typical.
Which is typical.
Everything fits.
What is your storm retention capacity there? Is that like 100-year?
Yeah, everything,
Ben?
we've got to do the 100-year 72, 100-year 25. I don't know why we do the median 3-year storm anymore. So, but we're doing all the way to 100 years, and that's what is required.
Right.
And we get the in-your farms permits in St. John's, so.
That speaks well for the retention there on how much water that'll actually hold in a hurricane situation or something like that. So
My developer would love to get a couple more lots back, but what we have to deal with.
Anything else on this side? Anything on this side? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve?
Todd, motion to approve.
I second.
Second, Robert, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, passes unanimously. Yep. Okay, so we now have two public hearings on the agenda. The first is Theta Capital Partners LLC request to rezone approximately 10.37 acres from CL, Limited Commercial District, to CG, General Commercial District. Any declaration of ex parte communications? No. Anyone who would like to speak, get sworn in on this and the other public hearing?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
And staff presentation.
Good evening, Chris Balter, Chief of Long Range Planning. Before you, you have the Theta Capital Partners rezoning request from CL to CG. The purpose is to secure the zoning necessary to develop the parcels with the uses that are allowed under the CG zoning district at a density consistent with the allowed density of the comprehensive plan land use designation, which is CI, Commercial Industrial. CL zoning district. The CL district allows for uses such as banks, beauty shops, general and professional offices, and grocery stores. The CG district allows uses such as banks, credit unions, various offices, various health and medical uses, laundromats, beauty shops, general auto repair, car washes, health and fitness centers, veterinary clinics, animal boarding, used vehicle sales, boat sale and rental, business services, and professional services.
Chris, will you pull the microphone a little closer to you?
Sure.
Oh, it's not on, that's why.
That explains
You want to move over? Oh, here, you can grab my. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that.
Thank you. All right, the CI future land use designation. The commercial industrial future land use designation is intended to provide an area for the development of industrial and commercial uses. It's located in areas with suitable levels of service and infrastructure for urban scale development, and it's located along major transportation routes and separated from residential areas. The zoning map. So to the north, you'll see vacant general commercial. To the west, you'll see industrial. To the south, you'll see heavy commercial, and to the east, you'll see heavy commercial as well as residential. The future land use map shows it's all in commercial industrial. The criteria that was analyzed: the concurrency, consistency with the comprehensive plan, consistency with the county land development regulations, environmental impacts, and compatibility with surrounding uses. For the concurrency, the check for sufficient capacity for certain facilities: transportation, water, wastewater, solid waste, and stormwater management. A detailed concurrency review will be done at the time of the project development. We do a initial concurrency review, and it did pass those. So the most intense use are comparable for each zoning district, so it's an exact trade-off. So the consistency with the comprehensive plan, it meets future land use objective 1, which promotes a compact and energy efficient land use pattern. Future land use policy 1.17, it's within the urban service area and near an urban center. Future land use policy 1.18, to encourage the development of commercial and industrial in commercial and industrial areas. And future land use policy 1.43, it has its own specific criteria, which will be in the next slide. So for that, it's along arterial roads and major intersections. It is. US 1 is a principal arterial road. It's separated from residential development. It is. The closest residential development is separated from subject site by US Highway 1 and CL zone property. Industrial zones, it's separated from. The industrial property is located west across Old Dixie Highway and the FEC railroad tracks. And new retail and office areas. Many of the commercially zoned properties in this area will hopefully in the future develop to retail or office uses. Consistency with the county land development regulations. The rezoning request is consistent with all applicable sections of the county land development regulations, including section 902.123 standards of review. Environmental impacts. Currently, it contains vacant land that is vegetated. Rezoning the property is anticipated to have adverse impacts on the environment. A detailed analysis on potential environmental impacts resulting from development will be conducted during the development review process. In conclusion, the requested CG district is compatible with surrounding uses, consistent with the comprehensive plan and land development regulations. It does meet the concurrency test. It meets the criteria to be rezoned, and there is no additional environmental impacts, and staff supports this request. Recommendation: staff recommends that the PZC recommend that the BCC approve the rezoning request from CL to CG. That being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is in attendance.
Thank you, Chris. Any commissioner questions? We'll start on my left. Go ahead, Mark.
Do we have I'm relatively new here, do we have a policy on upzoning? And do we, can anybody share what the purpose of this upzoning or rezoning is?
So we do have specific policies both in the comprehensive plan and in the land development regulations. For the upzoning, it would have to be compatible with the existing land use pattern as well as the surrounding zoning. For this parcel specifically, if this parcel was to be rezoned to CL, it should have never been CL in the first place because there is lesser commercial surrounded by a more intense commercial. It should have been between a general commercial or a commercial heavy. It's odd. It has an oddity that it's actually a limited commercial.
Okay, good answer, thank you. And the other thing is, I didn't notice on any of the uses you listed our favorite subject, storage.
I'd be happy to take that one. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Mutual. For the record, Ryan Sweeney, Interim Assistant Community Development Director. The self-storage is allowed as a special exception use in the CL. It's heavily regulated through criteria. It's also allowed as an administrative permit use in the CG, but also fairly regulated through criteria, primarily the 3-acre limitation, which this site far exceeds. So we're not going to see it on, at least not on the whole of the parcel. Somebody could potentially split it into a 3-acre piece and develop. But also the 0.5 FAR Florida area ratio has put a damper on the big mega storage that we're seeing in other zoning. So in this case, no, we're not likely to see self-storage, certainly not on the whole portion of the property, but even if they were to create a 3-acre parcel, it still, market-wise, would not be viable, most likely not be viable.
Okay, and you said it's administrative. With this being so politically sensitive, would you tend to take an administrative?
Administrative permit use
Like
has to
that,
come,
and-
that has to come to Planning and Zoning Commission. So if it's rezoned and they want to do self-storage on 3 of the, how many acres?
10+ acres.
Yeah, so 33 out of the 10+ acres, they would still have to come to Planning and Zoning Commission.
Oh, even though it's administrative.
Yeah, administrative permit is a term which is actually our middle level approval process. So it's kind of an odd number. What we usually use is staff level. That's the low level, but administrative permit is actually Planning and Zoning Commission approval.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Good, Mark? Yes. Anything else on the left? Anything on the right? Chip?
A few questions. I mean, when this was purchased, it was CL. Now you're saying it's not similar to the other properties, but have we had these other properties that are CH or CG upgraded in the recent past?
The property to the north was rezoned, I want to say, in 2006, I believe.
That sounds about right. It wasn't very recent, but it probably within the past 20 years.
Still, with it being as close as it is to all the industrial, it would still warrant an upzoning. Really, CL is supposed to be near residential and away from, it's supposed to buffer higher intense commercial from residential and then further buffer it to industrial. So you could see a CG, which is general commercial, or a heavy commercial would be a transition zoning, then to CL and then to residential.
Okay, so now what I'm looking at is okay, so you've got residential's next to the CH, and then they want to change the CL to a CG?
CG, correct.
So the commercial heavy is a buffer against the residential?
Generally, limited commercial is.
So has that piece to the east been rezoned at some point in time that we're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And then, I don't know off the top of my head, as much driving as I do around anyways for my job, but is the 71st between the Old Dixie and US 1, is that open? Because I know they closed off the railroad tracks there way back when.
Old Dixie's still open that far north. It's further north.
To the 71st?
Correct.
Okay. And then that leads to 69th Street, 65th Street again, with all the increase in residential out through there. We now have 2 flashing lights there. Is there any discussion about an actual red light there? Because those are heavily traveled.
Certainly not part of this. Certainly not part of this application.
Okay.
But if we we still have quite a bit of vacant commercial property up there. If and when we see those pieces start to develop, then we would revisit the traffic analysis.
And Mark alluded to this. I mean, why would the individual want to have this upzoned?
I mean, Bill, we got to be very careful in indicating a specific use because we can't zone it on a particular use, but it does free up some more commercially viable type uses, if that makes sense. And you're on, Bill.
It keeps flashing on and off on me. In a rezoning request, the commission cannot look at the proposed or the advertised use that's there. So if they'd come in and say, oh, we're going to put a shoe store there or something like that, some sort of retail, they can't be held to that. They could turn around and sell the property as soon as it gets rezoned, and it could go to another use. So you just have to look at the big picture on this and leave the details to further staff examination.
And then the fact it would end up back to us anyway.
Yes.
So. we'll
More-
get
more
to see
likely
again,
than
No
not.
matter what, when somebody decides to do something with this property, we're gonna see it. This particular applicant might have a business opportunity on his hands, and he does not want everybody in the public to know what it is yet. And he's trying to get the zoning changed to move forward with that idea, and that's probably what this is.
Okay.
Good, Chip?
I understand it.
Anyone else on the right? All right, this is a public hearing, so I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for public comment. Please come to either one of the podiums, state your name and address if you have any comments. Going once, going twice. No one has comments. I'll close the public hearing. Any additional commissioner questions? Start on the right. None? Start on the left? None? I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
Beth moves to approve. Todd seconds. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Very good. We have one more public hearing on the agenda tonight, if I can find it. And that is a retreat at Citrus Ridge, LLC's request to rezone approximately 51.78 acres from A1 Agricultural 1 District up to 1 unit per 5 acres to RM6 Multiple Family Residential District up to 6 units per acre. Any ex parte communications on this one? Nope. And so everyone should have been sworn in who wants to speak on this. So we will go ahead with staff presentation. Chris, is this you again?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
All right, before you, we have the retreat at Citrus Ridge rezoning request for A1 to RM6. Purpose, secure the zoning necessary to develop the parcel with the uses that are allowed under the RM6 zoning district at a density consistent with the allowed density of the comprehensive plan land use designation, which is M1. A1 district within the urban service area serves as a holding zone until the property owner, based on market conditions, requests a zoning consistent with the property's land use designation. RM6 zoning. RM6 district, residential multifamily up to 6 units per acre is intended to provide an area for the development of multifamily residential units and to meet the needs of the residents as well as provide varied and diverse housing supply. M1 future land use designation. The medium density residential designations are M1 up to 8 units per acre and M2, which is up to 10 units per acre. It's located in areas with services and infrastructure. These designations allow the highest residential densities in the county. They're located along major transportation routes near shopping, employment, and service centers. The land use designations do not preclude the development of single-family residence. The zoning map you'll see to the east is RM6 zoning designation, A1 to the west. To the north is A1. To the west also is light industrial, and to the south is RM6 as well. Future land use map shows that the property surrounding the property is M1 mostly, and CI to the north and west. The criteria that was analyzed was concurrency, consistency with the comprehensive plan, consistency with the county land development regulations, environmental impacts, and compatibility with surrounding uses. So the check for sufficient capacity for certain facilities, transportation, water, wastewater, solid waste, stormwater management, and a detailed concurrency review will be done at the time of project development. So consistency with the comprehensive plan, it meets future land use objective 1, which promotes a compact and efficient land use pattern. Future land use policies 1.13 and 1.14. It's within the urban service area and consistent with the M1 future land use. 1.43 adjacent to multifamily along Collector Road and does not abut single family. Future land use objective 2, it's located in the urban service area, which contains the necessary infrastructure services. Future Land Use Policy 2.2 encourages and directs growth into the urban service area. Transportation Element Policy 8.1 promotes infill development and encourages higher intensity uses near major corridors. Housing Element Objective 2 provides adequate sites to accommodate current and anticipated housing demand for all income groups and groups with special housing needs. And Housing Element Policy 1.9 supports housing development near major employment centers. Consistency with the county land development regulations. Their zoning request is consistent with all the applicable sections of the county land development regulations, including section 902.123, standards of review. Environmental impacts. It's currently vacant land that is vegetated. The rezoning the property is anticipated to have no adverse impacts to the environment. A detailed analysis of the potential environmental impacts resulting from development will be conducted during the development review phase. Conclusion, the requested RM6 is compatible with the existing uses to the west, north, and potential future uses to the east. Consistent with the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations, it meets the criteria to be rezoned. There's no additional environmental impacts, and staff supports the request. Recommendation, staff recommends that the PCC recommend that the BCC approve the rezoning request from A1 to RM6. That being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is in attendance.
Thank you again, Chris. Any commissioner questions? We'll start on the left.
I don't know if this is a question, but if you could educate me a little bit, I'd appreciate it. I was always under the understanding before I was appointed to this commission, and even when I was on the City Planning and Zoning Board, that A1 that's no longer agricultural kind of has an automatic path to an RM6. Is that true, and is this one of those type circumstances?
So any A1 property that's actually in the urban service area is considered a holding zone, meaning that if it's no longer being used for agricultural, it hasn't been upzoned or rezoned to something that's going to be a potential use. So it's truly a holding zone. It could go, to a lesser zoning district if that is a case.
Mark, it's really going to depend on the underlying land use. So there will be A1 holding zones that's going to have a L1 or L2 land use, and that's more likely to be single-family residential zoning, whereas with the M1 or M2, yeah, it's a pretty clear path to get to. RM6 they're not even really maxing out. RM8 would be the cap for M1. So yes, generally speaking, and then you take into account the surrounding zoning and development pattern, and that's how we arrive at where we're at.
Right. So let me restate. This is not necessarily a slam dunk or an automatic thing, but it's pretty much.
Well, I would say the opposite.
Close.
It does when you read A1 RM6, you're like, holy cow, that's two opposite ends of the spectrum. But the starting point really isn't A1. It's only A1 because the county is not going to arbitrarily pick and choose zoning districts for these underlying land uses. We wait on the applicant or the property owner to see what the market conditions would support, but also what the surrounding zoning. But yes, it's not a guarantee, but it's certainly shouldn't be as shocking as what it sounds like, if that makes sense.
And it's not one of those things where we have to approve this, but we probably should in this case.
Based on our recommendations, yes.
I understand. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. 16th Street and 12th Street do not exist at this time, correct?
That is correct.
Correct.
Okay, so if they come in with a project, they'd be required to dedicate the necessary right-of-way for those two. If it had come in as a RM6 project, would they need ingress egress off both 16th and 12th, or could they just choose one?
Bill, I would guess that in order to distribute traffic and not have to signalize one, they would try to improve both and split the difference. But that, again, that would really, that will be revisited depending on what they're actually proposing. Just because they're proposing RM6, we all know full well they rarely land it anywhere near that. So it'll depend on, the traffic analysis that was done during the rezoning is assumed at the highest and best, and it's a more of a level of service, make sure nothing fails type analysis. But when we get to the actual project that comes in, we'll know the exact trips, the exact distribution, but yet my guess would be they would want to improve both in order not to put everything on one.
Probably depend on the overall density of the community when they're done.
Correct. And the number
And
of,
that's something that'll be addressed at a later date.
absolutely.
And if it's a single sub or?
Correct. Yeah, there's several factors, but again, going back to the having to improve both versus one or the other, it depends on those factors.
Okay. And on the diagram, that's the FPL Service Center on the west side of 98th?
Correct.
What is the underlying land use of the property directly to the west of the proposed property? Do you know?
M1.
Is it all
There's,
M1?
if you go to your next
It's all-
page.
Okay, it's all M1?
Grass.
Yeah,
And-
exactly.
And it's M1 to the south of the FPL site
Correct.
too?
And to the west.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the FPL is sort of an extension of the CI. That's the only piece of the CI that drops below 16th Street.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill, for that clarification. Anything else on the left? Anything on the right? No, this is a public hearing, so I'll go ahead and open.
Chip has
Be
something.
polite. I was trying to be polite and let somebody else speak.
The only thing I had was just a curiosity on something like this. What's the max density they can get, max units?
RM8 would be the highest.
Okay,
So
wow.
they're,
This is good. Okay.
good, Chip.
I know the property to the east has a, what was that, a gas transmission line, or? Because I know the plan that we looked at a while ago, we had to have some kind of a buffer against that due to whatever reasons, I'm assuming safety. It's a gas line, right?
It's to the east of the project.
All right, so the eastern edge of this property, there is something there. I don't know if it's a dirt road or whatever. Is that any other type of utility?
It's a platted road. So we do have utilities that run through the roads. With this, when the actual road is built, no utilities will run through the road. We put them in easements. So potentially, it will be either on the front, on the north or south side of 12th.
Okay, and then the property to, just immediately to the west of that, isn't that part of the airstrip?
That property is part of the airstrip.
And is there a certain buffer required for that?
No, but we will have to do FAA analysis once we get into the development side of things. Just for what it's worth, to the immediate east is approved as Venetian Grove.
Is it what now?
Venetian Grove, which you all approved about 2 years ago.
Venetian Grove.
Venetian, yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
And that's, the gas line runs through the Venetian property, so they do have to, I think it's like a 300-foot wide right-of-way easement.
Bisects the property.
Okay.
Is that light brown line going through?
Yeah, you can see the pathway that runs through.
Okay.
And also, to Bill's point, 12th Street is slated to be improved by Venetian if Venetian comes in first.
And my concern is with the RM6, I mean, whether it's multifamily or not, and then you've got height limitations next to an airport that all is handled by the FAA.
We had to do that full analysis, and mind you, this is much closer to the airstrip than the Venetian piece was, but yeah, there's a very sophisticated analysis that goes into it. Although I have heard that the airstrip piece is
For sale.
It's been for sale for a long time.
It may be on the wayside.
Yes. So actually, as I heard, they could go to RM8
Correct.
potentially. So, and at RM6, usually you get about 4 units an acre out of it. So it's not really that high a density. Okay.
You good, Chip?
Yes, sir.
Anyone else on the right? Okay, now we can open the public hearing. This is a public hearing. We'll go ahead and open it for public comment. Anyone to speak on this? Going once, going twice. No one to speak on the public hearing, so we will close the public hearing. Any additional questions? None. I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Todd, motion to approve? Second, Beth, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I thought I heard Jordan, but that's fine.
Okay, good, good. So, very nice, very nice. Bruce, commissioner matters. I have one commissioner matter. I noticed there is that the seat 3 is vacant. Can you give us an update on that?
Just going to touch on that in planning matters, but that's a good segue unless there's other commissioner matters. Yes, Curtis Carpenter did resign, I believe, Monday morning, and Commissioner Erman has already made an appointment to fill that, that position. So unfortunately, because of the short turnaround, he was not available to attend tonight, but it'll be on I believe it'll be on the June 6th BCC, the appointment.
Yes, the board doesn't need, the BCC, the Board of County Commissioners, does not need to approve the commissioner's appointment. They each have their own separate one. The board only votes on the at-large positions.
All right.
But it will be
We're
filled.
good. We're
It'll
good
be
for zone 3.
Correct. His name just, I'm sorry, do you recall?
His name's Calvin Reams.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, it escaped my mind.
Save from the left.
Thanks. Yes, Calvin Reams. He's currently on the ELAP, but he's moving over to P&Z.
Great, great, great. Thank you for doing that. Any other commissioner matters? Seeing none, planning matters?
The only other item I was going to touch on is that will not be having the June 8th meeting, primarily because it's a very quick turnaround. Next week would be Packet Week, and we have the holiday. But we will be having the June 22nd meeting, just FYI. Well, that's it for me.
When will we see the hotel in,
Thanks a lot.
You may see the hotel, or you may not.
Good news from planning staff. Thank
Yes.
you. Good. Attorney matters?
None, sir.
Excellent. Meeting adjourned.
All right, Beth, here's my. Oh, did you want one too? Became a-